The staff at the most exclusive golf club in the city couldn't stop laughing. A man stood quietly at the reception desk, dressed in a plain jacket. No designer logo in sight. No entourage, no arrogance. Around him were marble floors, gold-framed portraits, and men who believed wealth was something you looked like. This place wasn't just a golf club. It was a fortress for the elite. The manager barely looked up. "Membership here isn't for everyone," he said coldly, scanning the man from head to toe. "We don't allow walk-ins." The man smiled politely calm, unbothered. "I'm not here for a membership," he said. "I'd like to buy the club." That's when the laughter started. Not quiet chuckles, loud, mocking laughter. Members turned in their chairs. Someone whispered, "Is this a joke?" Another smirked, shaking his head. The manager leaned back, arms crossed, enjoying the moment. "Buy the club?" he repeated. "Do you even know where you are?" The man reached into his bag and calmly placed a folder on the desk. $100 million, he said. Cash. The room went silent for half a second, just long enough for disbelief to turn into arrogance. The manager scoffed and pushed the folder back without opening it. "Sir," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "this is a private club for people with real status. You can't just walk in here and wave imaginary money." Someone laughed again. Another voice said, "Security should escort him out." The manager smirked. "Honestly, I don't know what's more insulting, the outfit or the fantasy." But the man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there, calm as ever, eyes steady, as if he'd seen this exact moment before. Because what no one in that room realized, not the manager, not the laughing members, not the people recording on their phones, was that they weren't mocking a nobody. They were mocking Ozzy Osbourne. And in just a few minutes, the same people laughing now would wish they had stayed silent. Because when arrogance meets real power, the fall is always unforgettable. The golf club wasn't just exclusive, it was untouchable. Hidden behind iron gates and towering hedges, the place had been built decades ago by old money families who believed wealth should be inherited, not earned. Every wall whispered privilege. Every hallway echoed with entitlement. This was where deals were made quietly, over whiskey and silence, far from the eyes of ordinary people. Inside, the atmosphere was polished perfection. Crystal chandeliers hung low over Italian marble floors. Oil paintings of past chairmen lined the walls. Men who looked down from their frames with the same judgment their successors still carried. Members sat comfortably in leather chairs, discussing stocks, land, and people as if all three were commodities. At the center of it all stood the club manager, tall, confident, immaculate suit. His name badge shone brighter than his manners. He moved through the room like he owned it. Not because he did, but because he felt like he did. To him, power meant control. And control meant deciding who belonged and who didn't. He loved moments like this. Moments where someone stepped out of line, giving him a chance to remind the room who held authority. So when the quiet man in the plain jacket stood at the desk, the manager saw entertainment, not a threat. "Let me be clear," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "This club isn't for tourists. We don't sell entry to just anyone." The man listened patiently. No defensiveness, no irritation, just attention. "I understand," he replied. "That's why I'm not asking to enter. I'm asking to buy." The manager laughed again, but this time it was slower, heavier, dripping with superiority. "Do you have any idea how many people come in here pretending to be someone they're not?" he said loudly. "Men who think confidence is currency." A few members nearby smirked. One shook his head in disbelief. The man didn't flinch. He simply looked around the room, not with envy, not with anger, but with quiet observation, like someone revisiting a place they already understood. "I've bought places like this before," he said calmly. That was the wrong thing to say. The manager leaned forward. "Sir, the membership fee alone here is more than most people make in a lifetime." "I'm aware," the man replied. "And you think you can just buy the whole club?" The manager scoffed. "Yes." A pause followed, not silence. Tension. People were now openly watching, phones discreetly lifted. Whispers moved faster than golf carts on the green. "Who does he think he is? someone murmured. The manager waved his hand dismissively. Enough of this. That's when the man reached into his bag slowly, deliberately. He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the desk. Not dramatically, not forcefully, just enough to be noticed. $100 million, he said again. Cash offer, no delays.
The manager didn't even open it. He pushed it aside with one finger as if brushing away dust. This isn't a pawn shop, he snapped. And I don't entertain fantasies. He turned to security. He didn't resist. He didn't beg. He just stood there calm and grounded as if he knew something no one else did. Because while the room saw a stranger in a plain jacket, reality was already on its way through the front gate. And when it arrived, everything about this place, the power, the pride, the hierarchy, was about to change forever. They hesitated, not because they respected the man standing at the desk, but because something about the moment felt off. The room was watching now. Every whisper had stopped, had died mid-sentence. The manager noticed the pause and raised his voice. Did you hear me? He snapped. I said escort him out. That was when the man finally spoke again. Before you do that, he said calmly, you might want to look at the offered. The manager turned sharply, irritation flashing across his face. He hated being challenged, especially by someone he already decided was beneath him. He picked up the folder with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated and flipped it open, just enough to glance. Not fear, not respect, confusion. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His smile stiffened, but only for a moment. Pride rushed in, to cover it up. He laughed, loudly. You almost had me, he said, closing the folder. This is impressive, really, but fake documents don't scare me. A ripple of laughter followed, encouraged by his competence. Someone clapped sarcastically. Instead, he asked a simple question. Do you treat everyone this way, he said? Are only the ones you assume don't belong? That question hit harder than the manager expected. His face darkened. Watch your tone, he snapped. You're already wasting my time. The man nodded slowly. Then let me save you some. He reached into his pocket and placed a black card on the desk. No logo, no name, just matte black. The manager glanced at it and laughed again. Oh, I see, he said. Mystery cards now? What next? Secret identities. He slid the card back across the desk with a flick of his finger. Listen, Karas, he said, leaning forward so others could hear. This club is built on reputation, on legacy. People like you don't just walk in and buy history. The man looked him in the eye. History doesn't belong to anyone, he said quietly. It just waits to be written. That wasn't up the manager. Get him out, he barked. Security finally stepped forward. One guard reached for the man arm, but stopped when the man turned toward him, not aggressively, demandingly, just calmly. I mean, leave, the man said. You insulted your own standards. The manager scoffed. Spare us the lecture? The man picked up the folder from the desk, the same one that had just been mocked, and looked at it for a moment. Then, without raising his voice, without drama, he said something that cut through the room like a blade. I came here to make an offer in good faith. He closed the folder. But Mao, I'm just curious how far arrogance can go before it collapses. The manager laughed again, louder this time, desperate to reclaim control. Out now. One older member frowned, unease creeping into his expression. Something about this did feel like a victory. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in from outside. Man took one step forward, then paused. He turned back one last time and said softly, almost kindly. And behind him, inside that polished room filled with confidence and cruelty, a strange feeling settled in, because deep down, beneath the laughter, beneath the pride, everyone felt it. The manager straightened his jacket and exhaled sharply. As if brushing dust off his authority, he turned back toward the room. With a practiced smile, the kind meant to signal that everything was under control. The kind meant to signal that everything was under control. The kind meant to signal that everything was aisle.
Not because it was funny, but because laughter felt safer than silence. The room slowly returned to motion. Chairs creaked. Glasses clinked. Conversations tried to restart, but none of them sounded the same. Something had shifted, even if no one wanted to admit it. Near the back of the room, an older member sat quietly, staring at the closed doors. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't recorded. He hadn't spoken. Instead, he frowned, deeply, as if a memory were fighting its way to the surface. I've seen him before, he muttered under his breath. The man beside him leaned over. Seen who? The one who just left, the older member replied. That face, that voice. The manager overheard and waved dismissively. Please. You see 1,000 faces in a place like this. But the older man wasn't convinced. He stood slowly and walked toward the reception desk, peering down at the folder that still lay there, forgotten in the chaos. Did you actually read this? He asked. The manager rolled his eyes. I glanced at it. It's nonsense. The older man picked it up carefully and flipped it open. His hands trembled. Just slightly. He scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. The color drained from his face. This isn't nonsense, he whispered. The manager stiffened. What are you talking about? These signatures. The man said quietly, these firms. They don't appear on fake documents. A hush began to spread again. What firms? Someone asked. The older man swallowed. The kind that don't answer calls unless they already know your name. The manager laughed, but this time it came out thin. You're overthinking it. But doubt had already slipped in. At that moment, a receptionist near the side desk stared at her screen. Frozen, sir, she said hesitantly. The manager turned. What now? There's a car outside. So, not a member car, she continued. No plates, tinted windows, black SUVs. A few heads turned toward the glass doors. Outside engines purred quietly, too quietly. The older man's eyes widened. That's not security, he said. That's legal. The manager's confidence faltered for the first time. Check the calendar, he snapped. Do we have a scheduled? His voice trailed off as his phone vibrated in his hand. Once twice. 3 times. Unknown number. He ignored it. The phone vibrated again. Reluctantly, he answered. Yes, he said sharply. Silence. Then his expression changed. Excuse me, he said. That's not possible. The room leaned in. I just removed a disruptive individual. The manager continued. There must be some mistake. His face went pale. Yes, he did present an offer. Pause, longer this time. The manager's hand began to shake. I didn't know, he whispered. The call ended. He lowered the phone slowly. Instead, he looked at the doors, the same doors he had just watched the man walk through, and for the first time, fear replaced arrogance. Because outside, footsteps approached, multiple calm, confident, and whatever was about to walk back in was not here to ask permission. The footsteps stopped just out the glass doors. No one moved, not the members, not the staff, not even the manager who stood frozen behind the desk, his hand still gripping the phone as if it might explain what was happening. Then the doors opened slowly. 3 men walked in first, sharp suits, calm expressions, eyes that scanned the room, the way ownership does. Behind them came 2 lawyers carrying leather briefcases. No rush, no noise, just quiet authority. And then, he stepped in. The same man, same plain jacket, same calm face, Ozzy Osbourne. The room didn't breathe. One of the suited men spoke first. His voice firm but respectful. Mr. Osbourne, he said, inclining his head. Apologies for the delay. Every eye snapped toward the manager. His mouth opened, then closed. What is this? He stammered. The lead lawyer stepped forward and placed a thick stack of documents on the desk. This, he said, is the finalized acquisition agreement. The older member near the back felt his knees weaken and slowly sat down. Acquisition, someone whispered. The lawyer turned slightly, addressing the room. Effective immediately, he continued. Ownership of this golf club has been transferred. The manager's face drained of color. Transferred to who? He asked. Though something deep inside him already knew the answer, the lawyer turned toward Ozzy, to Mr. John Michael Osbourne. Silence pure crushing. Silence. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the marble floor. No one reacted. That's that possible, the manager whispered. He was just what? Ozzy asked calmly, stepping forward. The manager looked up at him, eyes wide, breath shallow. Just a man you judged, Ozzy continued. By his clothes, By his silence, by what you assumed he was worth. One of the executives spoke next. The offer of $100 million was made in full, he said. Verified, cleared, accepted. The manager stumbled back a step. I didn't know who you were, he said weakly. Ozzy tilted his head slightly. That's the point. He walked toward the desk, every step measured, unhurried. The room parted instinctively, as if making space for gravity itself. I didn't come here to impress anyone, Ozzy said. I came here to see how people are treated when they think no one important is watching. He placed his hand on the desk, the same desk where his offer had been pushed aside. And you showed me exactly that. The manager dropped to his knees. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking. Please, I made a mistake. Ozzy looked around the room, at the members who had laughed, at the staff who had stayed silent, at the one young employee near the wall who had never smirked, never whispered, never raised a phone. Ozzy turned to him. What's your name? He asked. Daniel, sir, the young man replied, stunned. You treated me with respect, Ozzy said. Without knowing who I was. He turned back to the manager. You didn't fail because you insulted me, Ozzy said quietly. You failed because you revealed who you are when you thought power was on your side. He nodded once to the executives. Effective immediately, one of them announced. This manager is relieved of his position. The manager collapsed, shaking. Ozzy turned toward the room one last time. Let this place remember something, he said. Money can buy buildings. Status can buy access. But respect, he paused. Respect is always earned. And with that, he turned and walked away, not as a celebrity, not as a billionaire, but as the man who had just rewritten the rules of the room. Behind him, no one laughed. No one spoke. They only watched. As true power walked out in silence. The room stayed frozen long after Ozzy Osbourne walked away. No applause, no whispers, just the quiet aftermath of authority being stripped bare. The former manager still knelt on the marble floor, his hands trembling, his confidence completely gone. The gold watch he once flashed now looked heavy, useless weight on a man who had lost everything that made him feel important. Security approached him, not aggressively, but firmly. Sir, one of them said, we need you to come with us. The manager didn't resist. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, eyes hollow, and allowed himself to be escorted out through the same doors he had ordered others to leave through countless times before. This time, no one laughed. As the doors closed behind him, the club felt different. Like the walls themselves had been listening and finally decided who deserved to stay. One of the executives cleared his throat and turned to the staff. Everyone, please return to your stations, he said. There will be changes, effective immediately. The word changes echoed. The young employee, Daniel, still stood where he had been, unsure whether to move or breathe. Moments ago, he had been invisible. Now eyes kept finding him. An executive gestured toward him. Daniel, could you come forward? Daniel hesitated, then stepped toward the desk. You showed professionalism today, the executive said. You treated a guest with dignity when it mattered most. Daniel swallowed. I was just doing my job. The executive smiled faintly. Exactly. He handed Daniel a folder. Until further notice, you'll be acting floor supervisor. Daniel's eyes widened, sir. Congratulations, the executive said. You've earned it. Around the room, reactions were mixed. Some nodded approvingly. Others looked uncomfortable, forced to confront the quiet truth that respect isn't loud, and power doesn't always announce itself. Meanwhile, outside on the terrace, Ozzy stood alone for a moment, looking out across the pristine green fields. Zone of the lawyers approached him. Everything has been handled, he said. Would you like to address the members? Ozzy shook his head gently. No, he said, they've heard enough. He took a breath, then added, make sure the staff understands something. Yes, sir, this place doesn't belong to egos anymore, Ozzy said. It belongs to standards. The lawyer nodded. Inside, a notice was being posted. New ownership, new management. Zero tolerance for disrespect. Members read it quietly. Some felt relieved. Some felt exposed. All felt humbled. As the day continued, Something subtle but powerful began to shift. Staff spoke with more confidence. Conversations softened. The invisible hierarchy that once ruled the room had cracked. Daniel watched it all unfold, still trying to process how quickly life could change when character finally gets noticed. Before leaving, Ozzy returned briefly to the entrance. Daniel looked up, startled. Ozzy extended his hand. "You did the right thing today," he said. Daniel shook it, still stunned. "Thank you, sir." Ozzy smiled. Not proudly, not victoriously, but kindly. "Never forget," he said, "how you treat people when no one important is watching." Then he turned and walked away, blending back into the world just as quietly as he had arrived. Behind him, the club stood. The same building, the same walls, but no longer the same place. Because true resolution isn't about revenge, it's about correction. And sometimes the most powerful ending is a lesson that changes everyone who witnesses it. Long after the cars were gone and the gates stood quiet again, the lesson remained. Not written on the walls, not announced over speakers, but felt deeply by everyone who had witnessed what happened that day. The golf club still looked the same from the outside. The same manicured greens, the same polished floors, the same illusion of superiority. But inside something fundamental had shifted, because power had walked through the room unnoticed, and arrogance had exposed itself loud and clear. Ozzy Osbourne never raised his voice. He never demanded recognition. He never reminded anyone who he was. And that's exactly why the lesson mattered. Respect, it turns out, isn't about knowing someone's name. It's about how you treat them before you know it. The manager didn't fail because he insulted a wealthy man. He failed because he showed cruelty to someone he believed had no power. That's the truth most people miss. Character isn't tested when you're surrounded by equals, it's revealed when you think you're above someone. Every laugh in that room became a mirror. Every whisper became a reminder. Every moment of silence became a question. How do I treat people when there's nothing to gain? Because one day, quietly, unexpectedly, the person you underestimate might be the one deciding your future. Not because they're famous, not because they're rich, but because life has a way of circling back. True power doesn't announce itself, it observes. It listens. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't shout. It teaches. That day wasn't about money. It wasn't about ownership. And it definitely wasn't about revenge. It was about standards, about the invisible line between confidence and arrogance, between authority and entitlement, between status and humanity. Ozzy didn't change the club by buying it. He changed it by exposing what needed to be corrected. And that's a lesson far bigger than any building. So the next time you meet someone in quiet, someone in ordinary, someone who doesn't look important, pause, because respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost everything. Do you believe the manager deserved what happened? Comment fire. If actions should have consequences, comment forgive. If everyone deserves a second chance, type respect. If you believe humility is real strength, and tell me, where are you watching from? I want to acknowledge every voice that still believes kindness is power.